Order at 12:03 p.m. on March 26, 2026. Welcome to everybody. Do I need to do a roll call or we just?
No need to
No.
do a roll call, Lisa.
Okay.
We can just go on to the next agenda item.
Perfect. I'll call for a motion for the minutes to accept the minutes of February 26, 2026.
So move.
So a second?
Second.
So just for the
Okay.
record, we've got Mr. Coleman and Mr. Bauza, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
Thank
So
you so
it'd be
much.
good just to list your names. Thank
Okay,
you.
motion to accept the minutes by Jason Bauza, seconded by Mr. Coleman. Any corrections? I don't see any hands up. All those in favor of the motion on the table, seeing no corrections, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much. That's unanimous. The motion passes. Or, well, any opposition? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Let's move on to our discussion items and starting with the status of the CROG legislative priorities. Matt or Don, is one of you going to start that?
Yes, we certainly can. Thank you all so much for joining us again today. I know we had a long policy board meeting yesterday, so appreciate your time back-to-back days. So Donna's been working really hard for us, doing a great job monitoring various bills. We've submitted testimony on a whole variety of things. I'm going to ask Donna to do a quick rundown of our legislative priorities, and then I want to spend some time on this House Bill 5226. Donna?
Thanks, Matt. So for folks that were on our call yesterday, I don't know if everyone was there, just a brief update on where things stand in the legislature. So right now we have moved past the general committee process. So public hearings concluded, and then most committees had their final meetings to report out the final bills that they would like to continue working on. So other than the appropriations, finance, and judiciary committees, there are no other committees that are still working actively on bills to push through. What I'm hearing about the appropriations and finance committees is that both of the committees will be reporting out their budget and then tax package respectively next week. So I'll have some more information around what the legislature's priorities are on budget adjustments, if any, for this fiscal year. And then once that's sort of happened, the legislature will go into a more regular meeting in the General Assembly, so in the respective chambers, to go through the calendar on the many bills. What I'm hearing from the House is that they really only have a total of 15 session days from now until the end, which is May 6th. So it's a small number of session days. And if you're counting the really large bills that they have to kind of contend with in terms of time, that really only leaves 5 full session days for items that are not gun-related legislation, vaccine-related legislation, school, homeschooling, etc. So those are like the larger ticket items that will likely not leave a lot of room in those particular session days for other conversation. So really 5 full days within the House of Representatives to really go through other items. So there's a real likelihood that time will really limit debate on many of the items probably before them at this point. As for the Senate, they really run on their own schedule, but there are a couple of the days that they've reserved at the beginning of April, beginning in mid-April. So I'm not sure if their session cadence will reflect that of the House, but likely it would have to if they're going to get through all of the items that I just described. Especially because they have some talkers on the Republican side that can certainly have stamina for sitting on the floor for very, very long periods of time. So just, running through the legislative agenda just at a high level. So education really continues to be sort of the conversation as it relates to municipalities that's taking sort of the lead on how the state is going to support us this year. There are 2 trains or 2 tracks, one from the House Democrats that really is a sort of a one-time property stabilization grant. and which would not affect the formula. I mean, essentially, they're looking to maybe increase the formula or tweak the formula between 2 and 5%, but that's not 100%. The one thing that they are sure about is that they'd like to do like a one-time grant to towns, and they're calling it a property stabilization grant. So it's sort of a deflating the education conversation a little bit from the House Democrats. Senate Democrats have a proposal, and I'm looking for the number. It's a low Senate bill number, and I don't know why it's not in front of me. Essentially, does tweak the formula, but it really does it in a phased-in approach, and it's really not an effective phased-in approach because technically, it really gets us to where we need to be in today's world in 2030, and so then it ties it to inflation. So that I think really sets us back as well. So there's continued conversation around, what the combined proposals will look like, but I think the appropriations budget next week will give us a little more light on, shed a little more light on this conversation, and then future ones as the legislature continues their conversations. Then, just regarding transportation, so we heard obviously from the commissioner yesterday around like our biggest or one of our larger priorities around, Fast Track East. So the other thing hanging out there is really the microtransit. There's been a lot of great conversation around microtransit. In fact, I think there's been more conversation around just it being an expanded option for transportation versus just a pilot. So I think that's really promising. The bills are still hanging out there. So Senate Bill 9, Senate Bill, and I think this the House Bill is 5098. So essentially, those are still there. The two chairs seem really positive around that. But again, I think that will also be reflected next week if if any funding is included in the packages that we'll see next week. On the energy siting and land use reform section, so there's still bills out there that are, seeking to make adjustments to the siting council. One in particular, Senate Bill 144 that came out of environment. That bill, again, as I'd mentioned in previous meetings, we've gotten a commitment from Senator Lopes that if we can get the governor's office on board and get language that makes sense for everyone, then he is happy to just put that on consent. And I think he's gotten some support from his co-chair in the House. So that would be great. So right now working on getting revised language and getting the bill amended. So hoping that happens within the next couple of weeks to be able to have those conversations in earnest and really be able to to get an amendment so that we can move that along. Municipal revenue, there's a lot of bills out there been floating around, but I think most recently, again, as I mentioned yesterday, Senator Fanfara, his annual, large item was Senate Bill 511, and that essentially is seeking to provide some economic development incentives, so sharing of state sales tax revenue with the municipalities of origin. So I think there's still some, fine tuning regarding that bill, but that is being heard tomorrow. But I think it's positive. I think he's, this is probably the first time in my tenure here where we totally agree with, or at least from a municipal perspective, we can agree with a proposal he's putting out there. There's also the Pequot Mohegan Fund Bill, Senate Bill 388, that's also still before Finance. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just running through this pretty fast. And then there's House Bill 5390, which is the Regional Planning Incentive Account that's still out there. And we're just waiting for the majority of these bills, we're just waiting on the file for it to basically move out into and land on the calendar so they can eventually take action. And the file, as I mentioned yesterday, really includes a great summary from OLR, the Office of Legislative Research. There's a fiscal note on there. So the Office of Fiscal Analysis does a state fiscal impact and a municipal fiscal impact. So that'll give us some good indication and also food for conversation as those bills continue to move through the cycle. So at this point, I think the only thing I'm sort of waiting for is, at this point in the session, is really the packages that come out next week. So we'll have a better understanding of like what the state legislature's priorities are as it relates to the budget. And then, there'll be some more files that slowly trickle out by next week that I can then fill in for all of you just to be able to take a look at a high level related to our agenda. So that's what I have for right now. Happy to take questions.
Thanks,
Yeah, thank you, Donna. Oh, sorry, Lisa.
Sorry, Wendy.
This isn't really a question, but a lot of a lot of people on here were on the CCM call where there's a big push to get support out there for 388 and to send, I think I got this right, Jason or Steve can correct me, just to, if you haven't, to send a letter to appropriations and CC your state senators and state reps that you support them to give the funding that we should have gotten from on the Pequot and Mohegans as that's moving forward.
Thanks, Wendy. Anybody, I'm just looking to see if there are any other hands up. Don't see them. Donna, I have a question, or at least I have a comment for the group, I guess, and then I see Peter has his hand up. So what's being proposed by Speaker Ritter in the House for this property stabilization one-time grant versus the increase to the ECS foundational piece? It seems to me that a one-time grant really doesn't achieve any kind of purpose for us, as opposed to the foundation increase, which maybe, isn't as much as we would like to have, but it's more than we have, and it would be ongoing and increasing. And we also don't necessarily know what municipalities would get through this one-time property stabilization grant. So do we, as a committee and an organization, want to take a position on that, or what should our advocacy look like?
Yeah, I think, in the House Democratic press conference, they did acknowledge that this isn't like solving a problem. It definitely is just sort of a fix for the now, or somehow like some small like solution or token in the now, acknowledging that education funding needs to be addressed, and that they explained that in this particular session they have other priorities, which I think was a great soundbite that technically somebody could use to say what other priorities do we have other than educating our kids. But regardless, they did acknowledge that this isn't like the end all be all, that they do have intentions in the interim to really work through questions around the formula and what they can actually feasibly do. They did mention in the press conference the state school finance project and their interest in working with them closely over the interim to really get the details locked in around the formula and what they can do in 27. So there was sort of like this general commitment that they look to do this in 27, or at least something more substantial related to the formula and tying that to inflation. But at this point in time, from the House Democrats at least, there isn't a commitment to do anything other than that in this session.
I don't really think I understand how that impacts the towns that have to pass a budget. Like I don't, and how much harm it causes every time a budget fails. Like this property tax stabilization, which we don't even know how much we'd get, it doesn't help. And I don't know, others might not agree with me, but if you are in a town where you have to pass a budget referendum, it doesn't help. And it's going to harm our communities. It's going to harm our safety infrastructure, our emergency response. It's not just our schools that will get harmed. Everything will lose. And I just don't know how to get legislators to understand and support that messaging. Peter and then Jason.
Thanks, Lisa. I had a similar question along ECS, and it's more tactical in what can actually get done in a 5-week period. So is it to get that one? And I'm not familiar with all the strings that would go with a tax stabilization. How it's exactly written and how they're considering it. That's one thing. Was I'd rather get something than nothing. But I completely understand what you're saying, Lisa. Like, where's that continuity? Where's that, long-term planning? And then it also relates to, there's only so many chances you get here. And we're talking about Mohegan money, the Pequot Mohegan money. Do we put our eggs in ECS? Is that a better long-term dollar amount? than fighting for the Windsor gets nothing from, and 40 towns don't get anything from Mohegan. And so I just don't know the order of magnitude and what's, politically feasible in a 6-week period, less than a 6-week period. So that's more commentary than it is a question, Donna, but.
Yeah, if I just respond really quickly. So obviously having the ability to represent both you all and CCM. I think, knowing what CCM is, what they're thinking about, and obviously being the general agency that represents all of municipal interests, they are steadfast in doing both. I think it really is important to maintain what exactly it is we want in on either front. So I don't think that I don't think it makes the difference for us, or it shouldn't at least, would be my recommendation. Based on what the state is saying they can do, we should just tell them what they should do, right? I think that we should continue to be steadfast on that. Like, I think we know the reasons why they should do that, right? So we cannot we need to hold them accountable to what we know is to be the truth. As you're all making your budgets, you understand, again, as Lisa mentioned, like how difficult this is. And, we need to continue to hammer that home. I know CCM is intending on putting together some press conferences coming up soon related to both PQAT and other funding, but also education specifically. So they're going to continue asking for what we've been asking for. And I think if CROG is committed to those, I think, as we have them in our agenda, I think we should continue to ask for what we've been asking for, and because we have the facts to back it up.
Jason.
So I have a general comment and a more specific comment, but my general comment is, of all of the groups that I get to be professionally affiliated with, the conversations that we have through legislative committee are by far the most valuable. Like, it is not close. These conversations are just absolutely great, and I appreciate everybody's dialogue here. My specific comment, I think, Lisa, supports a comment that you were making.
You said that at the Kerman meeting last week too.
No. But the notion of doing a one-time payment, I'm not the smartest guy on this call by a country mile here, but doesn't that just cause us a problem next year when that one-time payment isn't there? I mean, I'm digging out of a deep hole as it is already, and I think Steve's in the same. I don't really want my problem to get any worse.
Yep.
So I would put my eggs in the basket of some formula adjustment, whether it's ECS or quad funding or pilot. But I mean, that to me is it's more stable and it's less risky than taking an undefined amount of state money one time that I then have to make up for in a tax increase next year.
Steve.
Yeah, my comments in response to Lisa, and I share your frustration, and I honestly think this needs to be more of a public relations thing. I mean, CCM, the board sent out an op-ed really focusing on ECS, but I've tried my best as I proposed a nearly 9% tax increase for Manchester to put the context of flat state aid and unfunded mandates and really frame it as that the cost of government in Connecticut, but really, especially at the local level, has been pushed on the property taxpayer because of state policy and these structural problems. And, the COVID money, the ARPA and ESSER, was a Band-Aid that covered this up, that pre-COVID, we were in this position with, this time it's different and all the CCM reporting. We got a Band-Aid through COVID money, and now we're right back in the same structural problem. And I think the only way to deal with this is through public engagement and awareness, and saying the reason I'm proposing a 9% tax increase, notwithstanding the fact that my Board of Education is not living in reality and wants $8 more million, but even if they were much more reasonable, we would still be dealing with a structural issue, and I'd be proposing a 6% tax increase. So I think, and as was said on the CCM call about the PQAT fund, I really think that the not as much the legislature, but the governor's office kind of have their heads in the sand on this issue. And they're really focused on being able to say that they're keeping taxes down. They're not raising taxes at the state level. But it's really a slap in the face to all of us for them to say this. While we have, taxes in Manchester have gone up 40% since 2019, and that's prior to me releasing a proposed budget where I'm putting in a 9% mill rate increase. It's probably going to come down to about 4% if I had to guess. But you're looking at almost a 50% increase this decade in property taxes in Manchester, where I mean the median household income is like $75,000. I mean, we're looking at average tax bills of 10% of household income is for property taxes. And again, it's fine for the state to pass these, take bows and do ribbon cuttings about veterans tax abatements and, other initiatives. But it's not sustainable the way that we're set up here in Connecticut with our 169 municipalities, and we don't have regionalization. Frankly, I don't know if it's a tactic to try and, because regionalization has failed, to try and get it to the point where we're really not able to do anything without having discussions about combining services. But this is not sustainable, and I think the only way that we can deal with this is through public relations.
Thanks, Steve. Matt.
Thank you, Lisa. So I appreciate everybody's comments and sharing your perspective. I know that these are very challenging budget times for the vast majority of our communities. So in terms of long-term strategy, I think we can talk about that somewhat separately. In terms of what we hope to realistically accomplish this session. So Donna, CCM and cost are obviously advocating strongly here. How do you think our delegation, if CROG were to issue a separate series of communications here, do you think that would have impact? Would we be better off maybe piggybacking on what CCM and cost are doing? How do you think we can be most impactful as a COG at this point in the session on this issue?
Yeah, so I would agree with Steve. I think PR is really where like the rubber's gonna meet the road because they are heading into an election cycle. And, this one-time grant is really part of that conversation, right? They need to be seen as doing something. And if they're not gonna do something as it relates to the formula, because they have other priorities, so to speak, then, this is what they're trying to do to sort of cover that Band-Aid up or just to put Band-Aid on something that they need to deal with in 27. So I think, supporting what CCM's doing, certainly, but I think you all, are this, it's like this, you're all the same members, right? So, and you're all towns. I mean, as far as it goes in terms of CROG's position, it is on our legislative agenda. I think, issuing a statement from the capital region makes sense to say that like it's important enough to our members, even though we have, we're overlapping with members with CCM and cost, that we put out our own statement to support the efforts of, those organizations, because these are real priorities. Like they mean a lot for our towns, and to what Steve was saying, these are the real reasons why. And while you think that a one-time, grant is helpful, it's really not. And here's why.
And I think we have to also remind them of how they berated towns who they felt didn't use their ARPA and ESSER money carefully enough and dug themselves into a hole. Like this one-time grant is encouraging the same kind of thing.
So following up,
I don't think we need to be nice about it. I'm kind of in my not nice era, but it's you can't, it's very two-faced. It's hypocritical.
So Lisa, I'd like to follow up on Donna's suggestion.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good one. So what if we were to craft our own communication? Perhaps it could be signed by Jason as our board chair and Lisa as our legislative committee chair. What do we think?
I like that idea. Could we also, maybe some of us could meet with the governor? Is that a possibility? Can we arrange something like that? To have a small ability to sit down and have this conversation?
Yeah, yes, we could certainly do that. And then recall, we've got House leadership in our region, right? So
Yeah.
is there value in us requesting a sit down with Matt and Jason?
Absolutely. John Coleman.
Thank you. I go back to what Steve, I think it's time to stop being nice, quite frankly, and dancing around the issue, as we have all along, and being polite. I think that, Steve's absolutely right. Local government's financing is unsustainable going forward, in the present way we are. We're looking at a similar, tax increase here on top of revaluation, which is being phased in, so it's a double whammy. And it really hurts, and it's significant. And we're not a wealthy community. And it seems to me that, we have been polite and friendly and sort of just took it on the chin and went on our merry way. And I think that, I think we need to stop that. And I agree. I think the one-time thing is purely politics, to say they did this great thing so they can get reelected in November. And there are some terms I would say to that I will not say at this point in a public forum. But I would strongly urge us to be very firm and very direct, at this point.
And I would add too, taxpayers aren't stupid. They know that it's a one-time not helpful thing, and they are watching carefully. I mean, we had reval last year, and let me tell you, people got themselves educated really quickly, and it was just a really difficult experience. And for those of you who have already gone through it, congrats on getting through it. And those of you going through it now, send you all the positive vibes. But we're just going further and further in the holes in our communities, and taxpayers know it. And I think we need to make that clear too in any conversations we have with leadership or the governor. They know it, they see it. Anybody else have thoughts or comments?
I think I have a question for Earl Burford. So my question is, what comes first, the communication or the meeting with the House or the governor? Time is clicking, and they probably are not going to have a lot of availability to sit with us. We got to be cognitive of that we may not have enough time to sit with them, and we may not have enough time to, or the effect of the communication may not get there in time. So I think that's something that needs to be considered.
That's a point. Matt or Donna, do you have thoughts on timeline?
Well,
Um,
sorry, go ahead, Donna.
Matt. I was just going to say, I think we should do both. I mean, we can make a request to, I think House leadership should be our first stop, but I think we can do both at the same time, like communications and seeking to get a meeting with House leadership.
And so, Matt and Donna, you take the lead on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Would it also be helpful, if we were to request a virtual meeting with our delegation? Donna, like invite the 40 of them and see how many we can get?
I don't see why not. I think it's great to have them all on a call, to be able to continue to reiterate what we've just talked about today. I mean, certainly see how many we can get. I'm not sure how many, will be available, but making it virtual makes it a little easier.
Mm.
And there also, have a couple of the majority of all the House session days, and then, a couple, as I mentioned, of the Senate session days that are being held by staff and members. So I can certainly share that, and you all can decide what days you're able to join me here at the Capitol, and you can grab folks live and in person.
So I have a follow-up question to that. I know that my representatives to the legislature hold very little sway. So So is it beneficial for me to grab them, which I've certainly talked their ear off, or do we target specific people despite representation? If that makes
So
sense.
yeah, so what I'd say is I would agree with you on that point if we were in a longer session. I'd say they are, as I mentioned earlier, really strained on time because they have large issues that they want to get through that will likely take up a lot of debate time. So they need bills. They need to come to consensus on a lot of the bills that they want to push through, if at all. So I would say your delegation actually does have some power because time is really what's holding, giving them that power at this point in time. So I'd say you should talk to them, but I don't think that would preclude you from talking to others too. In the
So when you
majority,
say they have
for
power,
example.
you mean they have power to take up discussion time?
100%, yes.
So are we asking them, am I asking them to about that discussion time specifically as it relates to the legislation we're concerned about, or am I asking them to lay off other legislation? Like,
So I would say, I guess we may have this conversation here. Like, what is the priority? The larger issues like education and people, or are we going to, make that request of them on the smaller? I mean, not smaller as an important level of importance, but just the smaller ticket items like the microtransit and other items on our agenda. I guess that's sort of the conversation for this group. We certainly do both, but I think, as it relates to the Republicans, and just for you, Lisa, in this example, them submitting amendments on bills that, deal with our priorities that are relevant to any, like, doesn't have to be the bill, the bill doesn't have to anything to do with, what they're submitting. It could have one small, relational item and that they could claim as germane, and they can continue adding, amendments to these bills that would otherwise be priorities for the leadership, that then would give them a voice essentially to have a conversation.
okay.
The other thing that the less influential minority members can do this time of year that gives them an outsized role is they can just start talking. I mean, and that allows for the conversation to be, what is Ackert upset about? What is Gordon upset about? And helps kind of move things along, because as those really 5 available session days continue to tick along, minorities' power grows exponentially every minute they're on the floor.
Okay. Matt and then Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So just building on Jason's comments and then clarifying action steps. So the minority will use this as a bit of a wedge issue, right? So we got to be mindful of that, and we don't want to alienate House leadership or the governor's office. We got to strike the right balance. It will be delicate. So Donna and I can prepare a communication for Jason and Lisa's signature. We'll request meetings with OTG and House leadership. I am intrigued by this idea of trying to schedule a virtual session with the entire delegation, see how many we can get. But then getting back to the more systemic issues, that Steve and others raised, how and when do we tackle that? Is some of it an education issue where they maybe just don't understand what the key budget drivers are and what our limitations are from a revenue perspective? Is that something we try to tackle post-session? We try to build any of that in now? Any thoughts there, Donna? I'm understanding, I'm cognizant of the fact we can only do so much in a compressed period of time.
Just real quick before Donna answers, one question I had is, do you get the sense that the legislators are getting a lot of pressure from cities and towns? I know they have a lot of interest groups right now, Health and Human Services, obviously, higher education, notwithstanding public education in general. Is this really on their radar? Because to me, my suggestion about public relations, I think we should probably try and do something as CROG, but my point is more that as you guys are rolling out your budgets and you're having those of you that are unfortunate and have to hold budget votes, I mean, really emphasize and consistently talk about how these are issues structurally from state policy and just keep hammering that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an, because how many people read an op-ed, to be honest? Like, not that many. But if I'm constantly saying when I'm in front of my board and when I'm holding public hearings and my messaging on the budget, this 9% tax increase is a result of state policy, and just keep saying that. And it's a structural problem. And until the state solves that, they can keep taking ballots for not raising taxes and providing exemptions and new programs. But it's just hiding the fact that all of this is falling on the property taxpayer. And I just think that message just needs to continue to be hammered individually, and really part of every budget conversation that we have around this state. Because I don't think
Yeah,
we're going to Matt's question, we're not going to get, I mean, Matt Ritter and Jason Rojas are well aware of this issue. They've come to CCM meetings. I've talked to them about it, and they'll give you an honest answer and say, listen, there's not a lot of flexibility. It's a mid-cycle budget. There's only, so much of a pile of money. So we're not going to get much this session. I think the bigger emphasis should be on the structural issue and the messaging, and that the property taxpayer keeps on getting the short end of the stick in an unsustainable manner.
It's a good message. And
yeah,
the thing is that even just addressing the ECS Foundation, even if they just did the $1,000, could have huge impacts for a lot of communities where they want to win elections. Like, if that's the driver for them, we can help them understand that.
So I would agree with Steve, like, wholeheartedly. This has to be something that we think about as a long-term strategy in terms of continuing to keep the messaging clear on this being state policy, and trickling down to things that sort of tie your hands. I also think that the communication from I think that utilizing the media is powerful, but I also think that in my experience at the legislature, when you all want something or don't want something and you're activated, and the membership here, like the leaders up here and members here, just rank and file members hear from you, that puts them in a really tough position, and that puts the caucus in a really tough position, because they're activating, they're to empowering to talk to leadership about what they're hearing from you all. And so it being an election cycle, that's really important for them because they need to get elected. And so if they're hearing from you all to say that these are real, like, constituent issues that you need to address, like, in the now, at least it provides the venue for more conversation around what we're talking about, rather than them just deciding that a one-time grant is all they can do this year.
Thanks, Donna. John Coleman.
I think that's all well and good, but I think that my take is that 90% of them are in safe districts and are going to get reelected no matter what. And that, and I think that Steve's really onto something. I mean, my sense is most of them have forgot where they came from. And a lot of them started out at the local level. And just like our federal legislators, they forget where they came from. And that seems to carry down. And it's not just going to be obviously CROG that's going to make this, what in many respects is a sea change. But I think, we have sort of sat back long enough, and I agree completely with Steve that we need to build a public, broad-based public knowledge of what the situation really is, and in many respects, pound the legislature and our legislators from every possible. But obviously, they respond, in my opinion, more to public opinion that's expressed on the broad basis than us walking in the door. That's always been my experience, that they'll be nice to us, they'll say yes, and we understand. But if there's a sort of a public swelling it's not obviously going to happen overnight. I think that'll be much more successful than just having, not to say we shouldn't have the conversations, but I think that we really ought to think carefully and productively about what Steve is suggesting.
Donna.
I was just going to say that this might be an unpopular opinion, but it has been successful in the past. CCM did 1 year in an election cycle, a report card, municipal report card. So just essentially, grading the legislators on their support for towns and cities. So to Steve's, building on what Steve's saying, if we're going to continue this conversation and build momentum going into 27. It's a potential. It may not be from something like CROG personally wants to do or as an organization. We would just do it obviously for our delegation members, but I think it's incredibly powerful, and I agree with John that a lot of these folks really feel secure in their seats, especially in light of the municipal cycle. But I do think there is still merit in holding them accountable and creating some good debate discussion.
And I think, and this isn't going to help us for this year, but I am more than willing to gear up as soon as session ends and start working on next year and having a group of us working on this and talking to legislators right away. Like first coming together, building our strategy, and then being relentless, including getting our constituents to be more involved or the legislators' constituents more involved in speaking out, and not waiting till January of 27. Matt and then Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I am conscious of the time, and hopefully folks can stay on a little after 1 because this is an important conversation, and we do want to touch on a few other things before we wrap up today. I'm just struggling to try to figure out what's going to be most impactful this session. Part of me thinks it's the one-on-one conversations with key legislators. I am following CCM's social media campaign, and I don't know, quite frankly, how impactful it is. All the comments are negative. So I don't know if CCM's getting lost in the noise as well. If they don't have as much, I gotta be careful. If your average legislature just puts them over here, then could we maybe have a bit of a different impact as a COG? I know certainly to Donna's point, you all reaching out to your individual members, that certainly has impact. And when you do that collectively, that even broadens the impact.
So just a thought, and then Jason. I'm a big proponent of looking at the toolbox and picking the 2 or 3 tools that we can use right now, and then having 3 things we keep saying over and over again. Over and over again. These are the 3 things. And if we're able to do that, are there 3 key things we can keep saying to our legislators? And I think the 2 things that have come up, a press release and trying to get people on a call with us, but reiterating, the same things so it gets stuck in their heads. It's kind of like campaigning, and they'll get it. But that's strategic communications, right, Donna? You gotta stay on message, and you gotta have no more than 3 things over and over and over again.
Read Steve's budget message. Basically, what it is.
All right.
It doesn't. He says you say it well, Steve. You got your 2 or 3 points, and it's basically unfunded mandates, state aid's not keeping up with cost of doing business. We're going to have to cut services as an alternative.
Yeah.
Did I mess it up, Steve?
Steve agrees. I think. Jason.
So, two comments, and I'll start with my second comment first, which is a follow-up on what Peter just said. I also had the opportunity to read and crib a fair amount of Steve's budget message. And I think that the 3 points that are laid out in that are really just 1 point, which is even easier to pound over and over again. And that's that flat funding formula grants is a property tax increase. Whether you're talking about ECS or pilot or Pequot or, all of those, not increasing them as pressures move up, as inflation hits us all, it's a property tax increase, or it's a service cut, or it's both. And I think you could really get it down in just those 4 or 5 words that we just hammer every single time we're talking to somebody. I mean, how was your day today? Oh, it was great, but your flat funding is a property tax increase. So I agree wholeheartedly on using a single message, and I think Steve's already got it. Following up on, I don't remember if it was Lisa or Donna who talked about the following up immediately as the session ends. I think that it's true to say that most of the members of the majority party in the legislature think that they're shoo-ins for re-election. So let's take them up on that and pretend that this is an odd numbered year, that they're be there next year. So let's skip the formalities of saying, oh, if you win again, and just say, listen, like, we expect you to get to work, and here's what our priorities are. Let's hit that in June.
I think that's fair. I mean, I even look at what happened last budget cycle when Senator Duff's community was having horrendous budget problems with their education budget. And he was able to pull in resources and make demands to get that fixed. But the rest of us can't do that. And so and I like Bob, he's a friend, but it was frustrating, to watch what my community was losing and to not be able to do those things. And people notice it. Anyway. Any other thoughts on this before we move on to
Well, just
to
to be clear on action steps, Lisa. So Donna and I are going to work on this communication.
Yep.
We're going to request meetings with leadership and the OTG. And then let's schedule a virtual session with the delegation, see how many we can get. But on the systemic issues, how do we try to address this long term? We've got our board retreat coming up, right, next month. This topic should be front and center, I think.
And I apologize, I can't be there. I'm going to be out of country.
Okay.
But carry the message. But it should be front and center.
All right, so we're good on that?
Okay.
Okay, I want us moving on to some other agenda items. I did want to make sure you were all aware of the legislative committee page on our website, where you can find Donna's latest updates, as well as all of our testimony. Folks familiar with that? Let me just show you quickly, because this is a handy resource for y'all. Just give this a second, it's loading. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Got it.
All right, so here's our agenda for today. So if you go to the legislative committee page on our website, here's where you have access to our adopted agenda. Here is where we have all of Donna's reports. And here is all the testimony I have submitted on behalf of CROG for various bills. So I just want to make sure you are all aware of that as committee members.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure thing. So I want to touch base on this other bill that Donna and I have been working on. It came a little bit as a surprise, and that's this House Bill 5226, an act concerning manufactured homes and mobile home parks. I don't know if folks have reviewed it, but it's been largely championed by Representative Rebecca Martinez, who represents Plainville, a portion of Southington, and a portion of Farmington, I believe. And she's very concerned about making sure that mobile home park tenants have access to a fair rent commission. And this is an issue she's been working on over the last couple of years. And mobile home park tenants, you may know, are a little bit different from your average apartment tenant in that many mobile home park tenants, they actually own the home, but they are leasing land in the park. So they don't fall under Department of Housing. Actually, they are regulated by DCP, Department of Consumer Protection. So Representative Martinez had presented this bill, and there's a section of it. There's a section of it that would require every COG that has a mobile home park somewhere within the region to stand up a regional fair rent commission to expressly serve mobile home park tenants. Now, the commission could also handle complaints that fair rent commissions can handle, but this would be a mandate. This would be a mandate. So it's above and beyond what was contemplated in 8002 or 25-1. Recall, the big housing bill that the legislature just adopted this past fall, again, states that COGs have the ability to stand up a regional fair rent commission, but it's discretionary at the option of our members. So at CROG, as you know, and some of you have been involved in the conversation, we're going through this very deliberatively, right? We're looking at whether or not it makes sense for us to stand up a regional fair rent commission. And what we may end up doing at the end of the day is staffing some number of sub-regional commissions, because the notion of one big fair rent commission for our entire region isn't appealing for a whole variety of reasons. The caseload would probably be overwhelming. And, we're concerned as the ability of one commission to fairly represent tenants across such a large region. So we've, and I've tried working with Representative Martinez here, and Donna has as well, just to explain the complexities of this, that this mandate would be problematic. There are also liabilities associated with a fair rent commission. We as COGs, we don't have the same immunity under state law that municipalities have. So if we take this on, we have to be conscious of that liability. We got to make sure we've got legal representation, the right agreements in effect. She has tried, Rebecca Martinez, she's communicated to me, I think the caseload is going to be very small. There are 12,000 tenants across the state. I'm not so sure I agree with her. I've also heard that there's an emerging plaintiffs bar. These are attorneys who are taking fair rent commissions to Superior Court. And then she floated another idea. Well, okay, I understand that some of the COGs may be too small to do this. How about you, CROG? Why don't you take on the entire state as a pilot? You stand up a fair rent commission to cover complaints coming from the entire state. And we immediately pushed back on that.
Yeah, Matt, do that.
Yeah, we immediately pushed back on that politely. It's like, okay, you want our 38 towns to subsidize, the other 120 something. So anyhow, we were in danger of this bill getting JF'd. And I've tried to work with Representative Martinez. I think if they really want one consolidated entity. I'm sorry, Anthony. Anthony, we're getting a little feedback from you.
Our storage thing. He never said.
Okay, I just muted him. We've said, hey, why not focus on the DCP? You know, if you really want one statewide entity, if you want to make sure that every mobile home park tenant in the state has this available to them, you know, a state department, a state entity like the DCP could be a better option. But they've been reluctant to go there for whatever reason, I think based on prior experience. So I just wanted to make you all aware of this. And again, we're trying to be diplomatic in our communications here, but you know, we were very concerned that this was going to get JF'd at the committee level. Donna, anything key I'm missing?
So nope. So the bill, though, just to clarify, the bill has made it through committee. So Representative Roland Lamar, the chair, House chair, you know, I think offered Representative Martinez the opportunity to continue the conversation. What he has told me is that as part of that, he has told all of his members on the committee that they should get their bills, you know, their sort of ducks in a row by the end of tomorrow in order for any of the legislation to move forward. And the way that he, you know, characterized it was that if the bill is not consentable, then it's likely not going anywhere. I think it goes back again to the conversation around tight timeline. And so if there's no, if the bill cannot be consented, or at least there's general, you know, interest for the bill, then it likely will not make it. When speaking to Representative Rojas and Jeff Curry yesterday about it, they affirmed the same. So I'm not sure. Representative Martinez, I also spoke to her yesterday, and she, you know, I think it didn't seem like she understood our opposition, but it did not seem like she was confident in the bill's future. So I think, you know, after tomorrow and a conversation I'll have with Representative Roland Lamar next week, I think we'll know better where the bill stands.
Thanks, Donna. So just want to make you aware, if any members of if any of your reps or senators ask you about the bill, you know, please point them to or direct them to Donna and me, and you know, you can express our concern about the mandate. Caitlin, you have a question on this?
Super quick question. Can you clarify, are mobile home park tenants currently allowed to go through a fair rent commission?
They
Should one
are.
exist in their town? Oh, okay, thank
They
you.
are. But and that's another frustrating point. Thanks for reminding me there, Caitlin. We've also emphasized, yes, you know, mobile home park tenants, if their town is subject to the Fair Rent Commission requirement, they can avail themselves of that forum. But, you know, I think Representative Martinez may feel that local fair rent commissions aren't sufficiently empathetic to mobile home park tenants, or maybe they don't have sufficient knowledge of the law regulating mobile home parks. So we've indicated, hey, we'd be helpful to help with training or anything along those lines. But yes, if they're in a town with a population of 15,000 or more, you know, by 2028, they're going to have this protection available to them.
Thanks, Matt. There's so much. Does anybody have any other questions or comments about this particular bill? Okay.
Like it.
Next on our agenda is other bills of interest. Is there anything that you, Matt, or Donna wanted to particularly raise before I see if others want to raise something?
Now, we talked about Senator Fonfara's bill, and you know, that might have some promise. So we're preparing testimony and support, as is CCM.
Okay. Anybody else?
If I could, Matt, is
Peter?
there a summary of that bill? I was just reading it and I was getting lost in all the references.
Do you mean
back to other
5226?
Yeah. And I don't know if there was if anybody had a summary of that, or if the senator had prepared something.
I'll shoot you our testimony.
Okay.
Which I think will be helpful.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Anybody else? Other things you want to ask or bring up?
Dave,
I guess.
Oops. Lisa, this is Peter. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's really not for the whole, necessarily for the whole group, but Dawn, I may need to grab you. There's a bill out there House Bill 5449 regarding license plate reader systems. And I just need to get a sense, maybe we can talk offline about, does that have any legs when it comes, I assume it's going to come out of judiciary when they report out next week, but just need to, it's pretty vital to at least Windsor's conversations. So,
Absolutely happy to have that conversation. Peter, call me anytime.
okay, thanks.
I think we've already addressed, or maybe the idea of engaging delegation, unless you want to, excuse me, set up a particular day for us to descend.
What do you think there, Donna?
S- I'm trying to think, actually, just give me a second.
I mean, that could be
you
a
know,
tool in the toolbox to do a press release that we're heading over.
Yeah, I mean, I think
don't
in
know.
person is always like helpful, right? Like to see you in the building is impactful. And it's easy for them to just miss a virtual meeting, right? It's less easy for them to avoid you if you're in person, right? So I feel like that's much more impactful, especially as we have a tight timeline from now to the end. So if you're willing and able to come in person, I would probably vote for that.
Do you want us to like set up that time through you so you know when we're going to be there and we make a plan, or
Yeah, so
what's
what
the
I can
best
do is
way?
I can share the dates that I have that have been held for session with Matt, and then maybe we can have a communication to you all around what those dates are, and you can all let me know if, even if it's not the same day, what day you are joining. And what I would suggest is to let your members know that you'll be there on that day, but that I'll also, make that point to them, and then just be here with you when you're here.
Okay. Any other thoughts from folks about that? I know some of us are consistently engaging with our delegation. Does it matter, Donna, if it's at the Capitol or if we pick up the phone and say, I need you to sit down and have coffee with me?
I think any engagement is helpful, honestly.
Okay.
But being in this building does like it.
Make
I
a
think
presence.
I think we're to John. What John was saying is like they've sort of forgotten where they come from. So when they see where they come from in the building where they've forgotten where they've come from, I think that's also like pretty powerful.
Okay. Anybody else on that? So I think where we're at is that Matt and Donna are going to work on a press release that Jason and I will put our names to, that you're going to try to arrange a virtual meeting with the full delegation to cover, that covers the CROG region, and that each of us will make an effort to get to the LOB and meet with our delegation.
And then also, Lisa, we're going to try to get one-on-one meetings with House leadership and the OTG. We'll probably just bring a smaller number of you to those.
Mhm. Okay. Does that feel comfortable for everybody? Anybody have suggestions or ideas that have come to you since we put this together?
Sounds good.
Okay, then that's what we'll move forward with. But also if we can just keep in mind that idea to regroup come June and put together a strategy to move forward. I guess some things might come out of the June 3rd strategic visioning session as well. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, then I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So
Jason,
moved.
so
All right, we're going to say that John Coleman moved to adjourn at 1:07 and Jason Bauza seconded. I saw those two boxes light up.
All right.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye. Be well.
Is anyone
Thank you,
opposed?
Lisa.
Any opposition? All right. Thank you, everybody, for taking time. We're adjourned.
Thank you
Good
all.
job.
Great job,
Appreciate
Lisa.
you. Appreciate everybody.
I know.